Hello, welcome back to the Grape Explorer. Today we're going to be talking about Pinot Noir. It's one of my absolute favourites, something I always seek out on the shelves, and I've got a Pinot Noir with me today, and pretty special it is too. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm the Grape Explorer. On this channel you'll find wine education, product reviews and lots of wine tastings, so if that's your thing, consider subscribing. If you've watched this series, the A to Z of wine, before, you'll know that I go through a little bit about the history of the wine, where it's found globally, what you might expect from it in the vineyard, the winery, and then some of those all-important aromas and tastes. And then I'm going to get into this bottle here. So let's get on and have a look at some of the history around Pinot Noir. Well, it's one of the oldest varieties in the world, having been around since Roman times. The translation Pinot Noir means pine black, as the bunches of berries resemble that of pine cones. Pinot Noir is particularly prone to mutation. It has a long history in cultivation, and there are literally hundreds of different clones in the vineyards around the world. And when crossed, it has produced a number of varieties, and I've included a couple there, Chardonnay and Pinotage. And as I said there, it really does have a global presence. So let's take a look at some of the countries in which you can find it being grown. Well, I think when many of us think about Pinot Noir, we're chiefly associating it with the Burgundy region in France, and I'll come on to Burgundy a little bit later. It's also the most widely planted black grape in Germany, where it's known as Spätburgunder. In New Zealand, it's the largest red wine variety, popular in areas such as Central Otago, for example. You can find it in places like Marlborough as well. And it's also really popular in the United States, particularly in California, and ever more so, more recently, in places like Oregon, Washington State as well. And increasingly here in the UK, you'll find it being planted more and more, and it's actually the second most widely planted variety. And that's in part to the fact that here in the UK we produce a lot of sparkling wine in the traditional champagne method. So we grow a lot of Chardonnay, we grow a lot of Pinot Noir as well. But like I say, one of the places that we most associate it with is of course Burgundy. And it's in Burgundy where archaeological evidence has established viticulture as early as the 2nd century AD. Those vineyards in Burgundy are considered to be some of the most terroir-driven in the country. And there's a particular focus on the area the grapes are grown. You know, across Burgundy, you only actually have to go a few vineyards in distance, sometimes just 1 or 2 kilometres, to find a real difference in the soil composition. And this is why Burgundy is able to produce so many styles. You've also got those gentle slopes where some of the soils give way to better drainage. You're going to find better quality of wines on those slopes than to some of the flatter ground. But Burgundy's really interesting. It's a real mishmash of soil compositions which makes it so desirable. And prices for Burgundy are of course thought to be around some of the most expensive in the world. You only have to look at producers like Domaine Romanée-Conti to see just how expensive Burgundy Pinot Noir can be. So what's Pinot Noir like from vineyard through to winery? Well, starting off in the vineyard, it enjoys moderate and cool climates. Too cool, however, and the berries are not going to ripen properly, which can lead to some excessive vegetal aromas, sort of a real stalkiness, a real cabbageness about them. The grape has a tendency to produce tightly packed clusters of berries, which means it is susceptible to hazards involving rot, and therefore good canopy management is required to get some aeration around those berries to prevent sort of damp and rot from setting in. And famously, it's a thin-skinned grape. This allows it to ripen in the weaker sunlight and cooler temperatures which they prefer. And their structure needs to allow for as much sunlight as possible to penetrate that grape and to ripen the sugars in the grape flesh. And that's also one of the contributing factors to why Pinot Noirs are often quite pale in the glass. So once it's been harvested in the vineyard, what happens in the winery? Well, as I just said, the grapes produce a wine that can be pale in colour. They tend to have low tannins because of those thin skins, and they are medium bodied. Styles can really vary from light and lean to rich and oaked, which will always depend upon the choices made by the producer or the region that's contributed to the growth of those berries. And again, just touching on Burgundy and something I commented on earlier, you can expect differences in aroma and taste profiles from vineyards in really close proximity to one another owing to those soil compositions. So what's it like in the glass? What kind of aromas can we expect? And this is going to depend on whether it's a cooler climate or a more moderate climate Pinot Noir. But typically when it comes to the cooler climates, we can expect things like strawberry, cranberry, red cherry and raspberry. And then when we start to get into some of those more moderate climates, we're going to get some of those red fruit characteristics again, but we may get things like plum, and we may tend to get a certain jamminess. And then also when we've got our maturing Pinot Noirs, we really start to get into some of those savoury aromas. And I've highlighted a couple here. That's mushroom, and then a barnyard animal skin type aroma is famously associated with Pinot Noirs. But of course it's not just still wines when we think about Pinot Noir. In Champagne it's used in blending with Chardonnay and Pinot Meunier. This blend of grapes can be found the world over in sparkling wines. Pinot Noir can of course appear unblended in sparkling wines, in which case it's going to be labelled Blanc de Noir. And the Champagne appellation has more Pinot planted than any other area in France, including Burgundy, which I didn't know, and I actually found that really fascinating, given that Pinot Noir is the dominant grape, black grape, in Burgundy. So let's get into a bottle. What have I got today? Well, when I said at the start of the video I've got something really special, I really have, because this is a wine from the United Kingdom, from England specifically. And actually this has only recently just been released and has come from this year's harvest. And it's actually labelled as English Nouveau. It's a Pinot Noir early 2020. What's fascinating about this wine is it's taken just 8 weeks to go from vineyard to bottle for me to be able to buy. And it comes from the 16 Ridges vineyard, which is in Worcestershire on their south-facing slopes. And as it says on the label here, it really wears its early Pinot Noir on its sleeve. So we can expect a real juicy, fruity experience with this one. Now I haven't opened it yet, haven't tried it yet. I wanted to do that on camera just to get my first thoughts around it. But one of the things that's really jumping out to me is when I hold it up to the light, already in the bottle, is just how pale this wine is. So let's get into this one. Let's have a bit of a taste of a really young, really fresh Pinot Noir. Now this one having just gone 8 weeks from vineyard to bottle, of course I'm expecting something incredibly fruity. I'm not expecting any of those savoury characters that we might associate that little bit more with maturation. But what have I got in the glass? Well, it is incredibly pale in the glass. It's a beautiful, vibrant colour though. It's a kind of pale purple, perhaps going towards a ruby, but incredibly pale. The aromas that come through, yeah, all fruity, really fruity that's coming through, and really red fruits coming through as well. It's a wonderful nose. It's got a real intensity about the fruit with it. And for me specifically, I get things like raspberry and cherry. Those are the things that are really jumping out to me on this particular one. So on the palate, wow. As expected, huge acidity, incredibly juicy. It's so young, it's so fresh, it's got that acidity to it. Very light bodied. And again, on the palate, the things that I'm enjoying are those red fruits. So some fantastic acidity on this one alongside those red fruits. But what about some of the other qualities that I'm getting here? Well, for me the alcohol is low. I don't get much of a sense of alcohol on this one. Very light bodied, as I said. And I think I'd say it's got a medium finish to it. Not particularly long, but very enjoyable, very fruity indeed. And that low alcohol in it and the high acidity really makes it sort of lip smacking, refreshing. And even though it's November right now and I can enjoy this one, this is something that would be absolutely fantastic in the summertime. It's so lip smacking, refreshing, perfect for a hot day. And who knows, perhaps in a few years' time, English Nouveau is going to be competing with the more well-established Beaujolais Nouveau as for releases in November, immediately after the harvest. But this is a fantastic bottle. Really going to enjoy this one when the video's done. So there we go, that's Pinot Noir. Little bit of an insight into this grape. Let me know in the comments section below if it's one that you enjoy. And please, as always, please be recommending grapes you'd like to see featured on this channel, and recommend some great bottles of Pinot Noir for me to pick up and drink. For now, I'm going to say cheers. I'm the Grape Explorer. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.